was.
Okay, we're back on the Morning Brew. Welcome back to the show. If you pick a show to watch this week, this is the one.
Right.
Dan Mayfield is our guest co-host today and all week long. And really pleasure to welcome our friend Eric Renz-Whitmore from New Mexico Tech Council here today.
Always a pleasure.
Who brought us an amazing guest. You want to introduce Gary?
Oh boy, well if you haven't seen some of the great new energy that's been happening this past year or so with economic development in the city of Albuquerque, one of the folks, pardon me, I'm getting all choked up. One of the folks who's really, really energized things, I think, and brought a real passion but also real experience as an entrepreneur to city economic development is Gary Oppedahl. I don't know. I think he's doing amazing things.
He walks the walk, doesn't he?
Yes,
Gary, good to see you.
It's great to be
Thanks
here.
for coming in on the show.
Well,
It's
I
about
think
time.
this ties right into our previous guests,
It does.
Jessica and Lisa, because they're having their big event this week celebrating entrepreneurs, but that's something you've been
Amazing.
doing for the last year now. Almost exactly a year now at the city, right?
Exactly a year.
Yeah, and what have you seen in Albuquerque in terms of entrepreneurship over the last year? I mean, it was kind of a thing that was building. And now we're seeing Global Entrepreneurship Week a couple weeks ago. We had the Inflection Week a while back. We've had tons of events going on. What are you seeing, and how is this kind of working into your strategy as a city's economic development director?
You know, and my strategy is pretty simple, and that is find out what works and do that. I haven't had an original thought in 20 years, but I'm really good at listening and seeing what's going on in other places like Austin and Boulder, and seeing which one of those things would work in Albuquerque. And one of the things that we're trying to follow is, Brad Feld's book, Startup Communities, which I highly recommend. And if you read it, you'll see a lot of what we're doing. And he has 4 basic rules. Things, when you have a startup community, it has to be run by entrepreneurs because entrepreneurs are attracted by other entrepreneurs. You have to have a give before you get long-term attitude. Boy, I wish we'd have planted a tree here 20 years ago. And I didn't, so let's plant it today, right? Third, you have to include everyone, which gets a little messy. But one of the mayor's and I's agreement is that things that we do are not meant to have Mayor or Gary or Economic Development's name on it or city's name on it, but it's in the community. And that's key to, I think, the success, because the mayor's not running again. So we've only got 3 years left, right, to keep this going. And the fourth is a constant schedule of events that engages entrepreneurs and innovators and those that love them. And that's what we've started doing with Inflection Week in August, the Tech Fiesta Week in September, moving the deal stream to October, and then culminating in Global Entrepreneurship Week in November.
And a lot of this is happening with the partnership the city has with the Kauffman Foundation.
Kauffman Foundation and coming up, Living Cities. We're getting a lot of national attention as being entrepreneurial and innovative, and so we're starting to see outside resources come to the city to help us do that, and that's key to what we're doing.
I think one of the big questions is, why didn't we do this before? Denver, Austin, Phoenix, Silicon Valley. I mean, we look at all these places and we say, well, they planted the seeds in the 70s and 80s. Where were we? Why didn't we? What has changed that we got to do this now? I
think people realize that, we can't just sit back and wait for things to happen for us anymore. I think we got used to that. A lot of people, they say, well, we were too dependent on the federal labs. Well, we were, because that was working. It's not bad. It's not a bad thing, and it's going to continue to be a great thing for us as far as technology transfer and those kinds of things. But it does lead to a little bit of a complacency. Like, okay, something else, another Intel plant will come in. So, something else will happen, and I don't have to do anything. Now I think we're realizing, all of us, that we all have to do something.
And what are you hoping we can do? I mean, it's not just entrepreneurship. I mean, what do we do as a city to make economic development a reality here?
We're looking at the end of this 4-year plan for a community that realizes that it can create its own jobs and be in control of its own destiny. I'm looking for a culture of collaboration, of connectedness, of communication, and that way we can build our own future instead of waiting for somebody else to do it for us. And I think that's key. We're not used to the collaboration thing. A lot of us have our heads down, just trying to make our own organization or our own company work. How am I going to make payroll next week? We need to lift up and look around and go, wow, what can we do to collaborate? We have the world's most nonprofits per capita in the world here, and a lot of us need to just look around and say, well, what can we do to collaborate versus worrying about just my slice of the pie?
Are you hearing the same old canards that we've always run into in New Mexico? Oh, we don't do that here. or we've always done it this way, we don't want to do it that way. Some of the things have been holding us back for years. Are you still running into some of that?
Yeah, some, but not as much as I thought. And I
That's
think
the
that's the
sense I'm
change.
getting.
That's the change. I think people are starting to see a little. You start pushing on that flywheel a little bit, and you get a little momentum, and people are going, maybe this is a better approach than saying no. We can't do anything new. We've tried that before.
We don't do that here.
We don't do that. Doesn't work here.
Yeah. Right.
But this is the reason why those communities around us are getting out of this recession faster, quite frankly.
We're also changing our traditional ideas of what economic development were in the city. For a long, long time, it's been recruit, and then bring money to the labs.
Yes.
And now I know the city's focus has changed to grow companies here. It really has changed from helping just bring in the Teslas of the world to also finding the local companies that want to hire another 25 people, another 30 people. And that leads into the new job creation fund we got that the mayor just signed, Wednesday last week?
Right.
And tell us a little bit about that and how that kind of...
And I wouldn't call it changing, I'd say augmenting. The last thing we want to do is start segmenting and saying, I've got a better idea, or, we ought to go all the way over here. It's not or, it's and. So yes, we want to keep recruiting, and Gary O, right? Gary Tonjes over at AED does a fantastic job of that. So let's keep him doing that, and then we'll also concentrate on existing businesses here, and on startups, and that's I think is an augmentation to the plan, not a change, because we don't want to forget the recruiting part. We've got more companies interested in New Mexico right now than I've ever seen in 20 years.
Well, one thing to say is, in terms of changing our environment to make it a more entrepreneurial place, that's something that really attracts the kinds of companies we want to bring here and grow here. They love that spirit. They love the millennial action that's going on here. And the more that they see entrepreneurs taking charge of the city and growing it, that's a very attractive prospect for a company that's looking around.
And wisdom is in the definition of terms. When the mayor said, Gary, I want you to turn this into the most entrepreneurial-friendly city in the country, first you have to define what's an entrepreneur. A lot of people think entrepreneurs are people who fly around in their own private jets, taking unreasonable risks with other people's money and starting a company every other day. Well, that's not my experience. I don't think it's most experience of entrepreneurs in New Mexico. And there's a lot of, most people, 80% or more of people in New Mexico work for small companies. And it's those entrepreneurs that are out there slogging, trying to, sometimes putting payroll on the credit card, which my wife hates, or doing other things. They're usually the last to get paid. They're working the longest hours. They're the most dedicated. Entrepreneurs are people who are very passionate about what they do. They're others focused. They're solving problems for others. And they're specifically wired to do it so they don't burn out. And I think that entrepreneurial mindset of, here's the status quo, here's where we are, but that's not sufficient, that's not good. I'm going to take some risks, I'm going to do some innovation to change that for the better, for those around me. That's what we need to define as the mindset.
Now, Gary, about a couple minutes left. We talked earlier, there's a lot of silver linings to not getting the Tesla deal.
No question.
And can you talk to that just for a moment?
Sure, there's many. Let's just talk to the fact that getting our name mentioned out there in the news around the nation, with Tesla's got it narrowed down to these 4 sites, and we were one of them. That gave us a lot of national attention, and we are getting a lot of national attention. And people are now looking at us again and saying, oh, they've just recently changed their tax code with respect to corporations. Oh, you know what? This is a good place since they don't have tornadoes, earthquakes, tsunamis, and hurricanes, and the airport doesn't close. And there's been a lot of people. The reason Canon is here is because of what happened to them in New Jersey with Hurricane Sandy. I mean, so we're starting to get some attention as a place where companies should be, and we're trying to really push that. We're going to start a Business Resiliency Institute and get a conference going here to show off the fact that we're a great place. Now, all the suppliers for Tesla, right? They should all be coming here because, they can't get any more benefits out of Nevada. and we're already the second, we're already a backup alternate site currently. So why wouldn't you, if you're one of Tesla's 35 major suppliers, because that was a final assembly plant, why wouldn't you locate in Albuquerque, right?
Makes sense.
And then we have the city's new job fund, and then the state's pushing one also coming forward, so that should help recruit recruitment and also development locally.
That's right. And I want to make sure people understand that those LEDA funds are for infrastructure, and therefore we have gotten really good at deploying those funds. That's just not cash to a company. We're using those for infrastructure. So even if the company were to leave, then that infrastructure stays. And so it's a smart way to do it. And Dirge Firth, my deputy, who's just amazing at writing these things. I mean, that's why we got the shot clawback, is because she wrote in there, you know, if the environment changes, and it did, and they had to leave through no fault of their own, but at least we got the money back, and now we're using it for other great things.
Really happy to have you on the show. We could do a whole hour with
should.
this guy, but glad to have a little of your time today, Gary.
Happy
Thanks
to be
so
with
much,
you.
Eric. Thanks for making this happen. Eric Renz-Whitmore with the New Mexico Tech Council and the city's economic development guy, Gary Oppedahl. Good to see you, Gary.
Good to see you guys.
Dan and I will be back. We're going to
Talk toys.
talk toys with a local business in just a second.